Hey, well, Happy New Year and welcome back to another episode of Aikman Bros Podcast, our first episode of 2022. I'm James Aikman.
I'm Andrew.
So, first thing we're going to talk about today is what is Jurassic January. So, we've done Jurassic January for a few years now. It's kind of changed a little bit as the years have progressed. The main thing is now that we have the museum, Jurassic January is you come out, whatever admission you purchase, the museum gets included in that. So the museum is essentially free with purchase of any of your adventures, with the exception of the vehicle-only adventure.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, kind of in the beginning of the kind of concept of Jurassic January, this was obviously before we had the museum, so we would set up kind of the gift shop a little more, I guess, dinosaur themed or prehistoric themed, and that's actually kind of I think we've talked about it a little bit on one of the earlier podcasts, kind of the origin of the museum. We had kind of little displays that would kind of compare past animals to present day animals, and that was kind of the start of the museum concept. Well, since we actually do have the museum now, most of that stuff has now been kind of moved over to the museum itself. So this is kind of the way we can still have a kind of the Jurassic January event and kind of be able to show off the museum. So anyone that kind of does venture out and brave whatever the Illinois weather is going to be doing in January, they get a little kind of add-on bonus, since it is the slow season, and kind of some of the animals kind of in the walkthrough portion of the park especially might not necessarily be out or as active as what they are during other parts of the year. So just a nice little add-on that we can offer now. So yeah,
I don't think we've had them in the past. We'll probably have them again this year. I don't know if our bakery will be able to get them done in time for this Saturday, just because they take time off for the New Year's. But we usually have dinosaur iced sugar cookies, and then we've talked about potentially having an area for kids to do coloring in at some point. They can color actual drawings of the different animals that are in the museum.
Yeah, I mean, one of the components early on, like I said, when we didn't have kind of the actual museum, was kind of these craft spaces, and we kind of had to do away with that, year 2020, in terms of with the COVID situation and all that stuff starting to happen, and so it's a little bit of a gray area, but we are slowly wanting to kind of bring that back, so more on that, I guess, but yeah, starting this Saturday, we'll start off being able to have the museum included in your admission price.
Going into a question that we get a lot is, when will big cats come to the park? So we've been asked that question from the very beginning. I know we really wanted this to be a place that could provide homes for animals that need it. So big cats are definitely one of those animals. I remember talking to our USDA agent in the beginning, asking her what are the top 5 species that need homes. Tigers, number 1 by far, big cat or lions, then black bears, wolves, and primates. And so we've always known big cats would play a part. The problem is just their habitat. So if we got a zebra here, we've got 50 different places we could stick a zebra temporarily, but we don't really have any place for a big cat. So we have talked.
Well, it's also one of those things we wouldn't necessarily want to stick a big cat in a temporary location. Like, we want to have a facility set up specifically to house big cats. So that's another component that basically, one, just kind of constantly continuing doing research and evolving kind of the different plans that we have for a potential big cat complex habitat, and then just the financial component is also another thing that plays into it, in terms of being able to actually have the funds and everything set up to actually start that process. Hopefully with the redesign of the drive-through, we will kind of finalize kind of a permanent location for future walkthrough expansion, which would include kind of where that big cat area would be. But definitely a lot of components. If there's any animal at all that you don't want to rush into, it's probably, a lion or a tiger that would definitely take the place of our hyenas as being the most dangerous animal here at the park. So, we got to take everything into consideration, not only from a day-to-day keeper standpoint, making sure our keepers are 100% always safe and protocols in place, but also you got to think those worst case scenarios with a tornado coming through and making sure that a big cat, a tiger, if we get a direct hit, we are in the best position possible to make sure that animal is still contained after the storm goes past and we start to do kind of cleanup. So it's definitely a process that I don't feel like we can and we haven't rushed at all, in terms of we want to definitely be 100% prepared before we kind of take that plunge into big cats. But there's no denying that, I mean, everyone is fascinated by, big felines. So
well, that was even before Tiger King came about.
Yeah.
Now after Tiger King, people are more interested in big cats, it seems like.
Well, and that's, I mean, it didn't really affect us, but that kind of shows the general public from a habitat standpoint, a space standpoint, that's what we don't want to necessarily have. We're not a facility that wants to have quantity over quality of life in terms of trying to get as many big cats here as possible. We would rather be able to provide a facility for, 1 to 3 or something like that, to where they would have large enough areas to where they aren't going to be kind of just going back and forth, kind of down long corridors or anything like that. So again, quality over quantity is kind of the mindset that we have with anything here, but especially with big cats. So with everything that's constantly is always kind of changing from a design standpoint with the park as a whole, it's just one of those things that we've never 100% feel confident enough to start even building anything that would be the initial phase of a cat complex. But like I said, with the kind of new redesign of the drive-through, and that's kind of completely eliminated like our issue that we've always kind of thought about with parking lot expansion and being able to make sure that we can handle increased volume of guests as they come in over the years and stuff. So now that we've kind of solved that solution, we're a little more stuck in kind of the design aspect, to where we kind of know what we have to play with now, and now it's just figuring out what the best kind of design is, and then kind of acquiring the financials to actually start making that happen. So if any of you want to donate to the big cat area, we're always open to accepting donations to help move that project along. Yeah.
Something else we're going to talk about today are mascots. So lots of places have mascots, something we've talked about for a while. We are moving forward with that. Kind of not give away too many details. It will be elk themed. We're still working on exactly what the outfit would be that it would wear. Also working on names, some of the initial names thrown out by team members who will remain nameless. Excuse me. Weren't probably going to be the one to go with, so still talking through names.
Well, and I think maybe the big push recently to kind of open up conversations about a mascot is more so trying to figure out a way to reach, I guess, maybe the kids, and kind of being able to educate them at the same time with like the adoption program that we have, and not only kids but also adults too. But so not only will that be kind of a component that kids will be able to interact with, and it'll kind of be the leading brand or whatever you want to call it with the kind of adoption program, but also, we've even talked about potentially kind of a comic book type of series that kind of again goes into details a little more simplified of what kind of the adoption process is, right, and what that includes and all that stuff, and have the kind of the elk type of mascot be kind of the leading guide through that storytelling. So there's a lot of different facets that a mascot kind of does in a more, I guess, kid-friendly way than what just a bunch of words on a poster says, or any sort of infograph that we do, right, or anything like that. So that's kind of another big component of the mascot element, is to kind of continue to educate guests as they come in.
Well, like you said, he's a entity that could be put into a comic strip to help talk about adoptions. We could look at doing children type books, even have a few resources that could do little short cartoon type episodes for kids as well, with him being a character. So I think you'll definitely be seeing him sometime in 2022. Moving on now to the animal spotlight. This week we're talking about our porcupines. So we have two different species. We have African porcupines and we have willow or North American porcupine. The Africans, we call them Thing 1 and Thing 2 off the Dr. Seuss characters. They pretty much destroy everything. I think they might also have the name Thelma and Louise.
Yeah, I think so.
But Africans are much bigger. You can get up to about 60 pounds. Ours are probably closer to 40 pounds. Quills anywhere from 2 inches to 18 inches long, and some are as thick around as a permanent marker. So they can definitely do some damage. But the biggest kind of myth or misconception is them shooting their quills. So they cannot physically shoot their quills. And if you're listening to this for the first time and you think that's not true, they do shoot their quills. You have to think through what would be involved in actually shooting them. So that would mean some kind of propulsion system in their bodies.
I'll put it this way. So the closest thing that I have personally seen with the Africans being able to quote unquote shoot their quills is, it was, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, where they used to be, we actually, compared to where the barn is that they kind of get, herded into during certain times of the year, there was a little bit of a walk that we had to do. So we would always kind of guide them to this area. So this would have been, we would have guided them out in the morning. It started to rain. It was during the summer months, so that's why they were out. Because African porcupines, they are a little more temperature sensitive than the North Americans, but started to do a pretty good heavy rain during the late morning to afternoon, so we decided to bring them back in. Sometimes they can be a little hard to manage in terms of when they do their walking, if they're doing a little bit of a longer distance walk. So they were soaked for sure, and I did witness one of them shake like a dog does when it's wet. And their quills, they are designed to be released so easily that when it shook, it actually did throw some into a bush that was right next to him. So it had nothing to do with them purposely shooting them or anything like that. But there is, I guess, the way the quills are designed, so when they back up into something, they are, immediately able to be kind of released from their bodies. So definitely very, almost like hair. Like they shed quills on a daily basis. I mean, we have so many quills that we sell them in our gift shop because we don't know what to do with all of them. So they do shed the quills on a daily basis. So they are designed to fall off their body relatively easy. And it was just kind of a weird culmination of the right sort of factors that played in. And so it looked like they were shooting them, but rest assured, they can't actually aim them and shoot them at anything. So we don't have to necessarily worry about that. But kind of the thing with quills, the quills are a very kind of unique type of defense that these animals have. So quills that are designed, like I said, to be released very easily. And then the unique thing about quills is whatever they stick into, the longer they are in that, whether that's a lion's face out in the wild or a dog's face here with a North American porcupine, they will constantly continue to work their way into something. So they have kind of microscopic type of screw type of mechanism on them that if you don't get them out, that is where they can have very serious damage to an animal that gets a face full of quills, more so from the infection that happens weeks, months after that quill has actually been kind of hit in that particular area or whatever. So definitely that's why, if you are in an area that has kind of wild porcupines, if your dog ever gets involved with one, you have to immediately take it to your vet and make sure that they get every single one of the hundreds of quills that it'll probably have in its face or whatever it was doing to it. Because if you don't, then it only takes one quill to actually stay in, get missed, and then you really have a big issue with infection after the fact.
And the North American's quills are almost even worse from the standpoint they're a lot smaller. They're about the size of toothpicks, but their microscopic barbs are a lot more intense. So they're the ones where they go in you. It's very difficult to even pull them back out. And Africans have quills in basically their back half. The North Americans have quills from the tip of their tail all the way past their ears. So their fur does a good job of hiding a lot of those quills.
Definitely from at least my experience, it's way harder to tell kind of where the North American quills kind of are as opposed to the fur, as opposed to the Africans, where you can, for the most part, you can really see a distinct difference, just mainly because the quills on an African are just so much thicker, it seems like, than the North American. But like I said, kind of the other kind of differences between the North Americans and the African porcupines is the Africans are a little more temperature sensitive. So they probably, after our cicada tortoises, they would be the next ones that we would probably have to bring in and kind of keep an eye on the weather. So usually if we get kind of in the high 40s, we usually maybe not let them out. If it's a real nice sunny day out, we can let them out for a little bit. But yeah, usually like around when we get right under the 50-degree mark is when we kind of have to at least be mindful of what the other conditions are doing outside. Definitely on a rainy day at 50 degrees, we probably wouldn't even bother letting them out, just because even though they are a 40 60-pound animal, if they get completely soaked and then kind of colder temperatures, they can play with their immune system for sure, as opposed to the North American porcupine, which willows out all year round. She does have kind of a shelter, and during the winter months, colder months, we do put in a heat lamp for her, just so she does have a little bit of extra heat source. But technically out in the wild, I mean, they are in worse temperatures than that, with no help from an external heat source. So she's definitely a lot more hardier than what Thing 1 and Thing 2 are, for sure.
And she's probably 25 pounds. She looks more like a fluff ball compared to the Africans. The Africans are definitely bigger than what the North Americans are.
Yeah. Well, and usually North Americans, they are kind of more known for climbing, as opposed to the Africans, which are a little more known for digging burrows and all that stuff out in the wild. So kind of some pretty significant differences.
Grass would not last with the Africans.
Oh, no.
And then the Africans have a dig barrier underneath all their dirt and mulch, which prevents them from pulling a Shawshank Redemption and tunneling out.
Yeah. But no, we've heard stories like with the Africans, he touched on it, that they are fairly destructive, in terms of they almost have teeth like little beavers, so they can go through quite a bit of material. And we've heard stories of them chewing through 9-gauge wire. There's a stall in the barn that they go in every night that we actually had to kind of porcupine proof. The stall is a concrete floor, but they managed to find a crack in the floor, and probably within 15 minutes they had a decent sized hole, where they had actually kind of chewed through the concrete, or able to get a little bit of a hold on it through that crack, and just completely grinded it to dust. So that was kind of an unexpected discovery, that they technically, if they are motivated enough, they can actually chew through concrete. So
I'd say next to the hyenas, they're our most animal that can cause the most damage, most destructive animal.
Yeah, definitely the way that their area is built is a lot different than what the North American porcupine's area is built, for sure. So even though they're both porcupine species, there are some very glaring differences in their personalities and behaviors, for sure.
Hey, well, with that wraps up this episode. So we look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Later.
Cool story, bro.